You're watching Learn American English online on YouTube. Turn on your closed captioning. My name is Paul, and today I want to help you learn English naturally. As you listen to this lesson, you are going to hear simple English, clear pronunciation, repetition, and natural speech patterns. I am not a chatbot. The English I speak comes from a real human being, and sometimes I will make mistakes when I speak. You do not need to understand every single word immediately. The important thing is to relax, listen carefully, and allow your brain to become comfortable with English. Today's lesson is different from many English lessons because we are going to spend time in nature. While you listen to my voice, you might see geese floating on a pond, water moving slowly, and perhaps light reflecting across the surface of the water. I recorded this video in early spring at a local nature preserve, soon after the snow melted. Nature is a wonderful place for learning English. When people feel relaxed, they learn better. When people slow down and observe the natural world carefully, they begin to notice language more carefully too. So today, I want you to slow down, listen, observe, think in English, and allow the language to enter your mind naturally. You can also read the closed captioning that appears at the bottom of the screen, but you don't have to do that. You can just listen. Many students ask me, Paul, what is the best way to learn English? I get this question all the time. There is no single perfect method. But one of the best things you can do is spend time listening to understandable English every day. That is what this video is for. You can listen while you relax. You can listen while you walk. You can listen before you go to sleep. You can listen while you drink coffee in the morning. And the more you listen, the more comfortable English becomes. Think about how children learn language. Children do not begin with grammar books. Children begin with listening and observing. They listen for months and months before they can speak clearly. At first, language sounds mysterious to them. But slowly, their brains begin to recognize patterns. The same thing happens when adults learn another language. Your brain is always looking for patterns. That is why repetition is important. You need to hear words again and again. You need to hear sentence patterns again and again. And over time, your understanding becomes stronger. Today, we are going to practice that together. As you look at the pond, notice the geese. The geese float calmly across the water. Some of them move slowly. Some of them dip their heads into the water. Some stay close together. Others drift farther away. When I watch geese on a pond, I notice how calm they appear. They do not seem to hurry. They simply move with the water. Human beings are often very different from these geese. People rush from one place to another. People check their phones constantly. People worry about work, money, school, and responsibilities. And because people feel stressed, learning becomes more difficult. Sometimes students become frustrated because they think they are not learning English quickly enough. But language learning takes time. It is a gradual process. It does not happen fast. A language grows in your mind little by little. You do not become fluent overnight. You become fluent through daily contact with the language. That contact can happen in many ways. You can read English. You can listen to English. You can speak English. You can write in English. You can think in English. You can watch videos on YouTube. All of these activities help. But listening is especially important. Listening helps train your ears. Listening helps improve pronunciation. Listening helps improve your grammar naturally. And listening helps you become comfortable with the rhythm of English. English has a rhythm. Some words receive stress. Other words are reduced. Native speakers often connect words together. For example, instead of saying, "What are you going to do?" a native speaker might say, "What are you going to do?" Students sometimes become confused because spoken English sounds different from written English. But this is normal. Every language changes during natural speech. That is why listening practice is so important. The more you listen, the easier it becomes to recognize natural speech patterns. But you really have to listen to the words that come from a human being, a real human being. Now, I want you to imagine yourself sitting beside this pond. Perhaps the weather is cool. Perhaps you hear birds in the distance. There is a light wind. The water moves very gently. The geese glide across the pond. One goose glides across the pond. There are 2 or 3 geese on the pond. Everything feels quiet. In moments like this, the mind becomes calm. And when the mind becomes calm, concentration improves. Many people spend very little time in silence. There is always noise. Television, traffic, phones, music, advertisements, conversations. But nature gives people a chance to slow down and think. I think this is one reason many people enjoy parks, lakes, forests, and nature reserves. Nature reminds us that life does not always need to move quickly. Now let's practice some English together. Listen carefully to these sentences. A goose is floating on the pond. The geese are floating on the pond. The water is calm today. A gentle breeze moves across the pond. The birds stay close together. The sky is reflected on the surface of the water. Now I will say similar ideas in different ways. The geese drift slowly across the pond. A goose drifts slowly across the pond. The pond is very peaceful today. A soft wind blows across the water. The birds remain near each other. You can see the sky reflected in the water. This kind of repetition is very useful. When you hear similar ideas expressed in different ways, your vocabulary grows naturally. You begin to understand how English speakers change sentences while keeping the same basic meaning. For example, the water is calm. The pond looks peaceful. The lake is very quiet today. These sentences are not identical, but they communicate similar ideas. This is an important part of fluency. Fluent speakers do not memorize only one sentence pattern. Fluent speakers learn how to express the same idea in many different ways. That flexibility develops through exposure. You need to hear many examples. Little by little, your brain starts building connections. This is why I encourage students to listen to English every day. Even 15 or 20 minutes each day can make a difference. Consistency matters more than intensity. Some students study for 5 hours one day and then stop studying for 2 weeks. That is usually not effective. A better approach is regular contact with the language. Listen a little every day. Read a little every day. Think a little every day. And gradually, your English improves. This is what I do when I study German. This is also what I do to improve my skills as a guitar player. I practice every day, and I'm consistent. Now let's talk about thinking in English. Many students translate everything from their native language into English. This is normal at the beginning, but eventually you want to develop the ability to think directly in English. That does not happen immediately. It happens slowly. You begin with simple thoughts. For example, I am drinking coffee. It is raining today. I need to go to work. The birds are flying over the pond. Simple thoughts become the foundation for more advanced thinking. And as your vocabulary grows, your thoughts become more detailed. Perhaps later you can think, the weather feels cool and refreshing this morning. Or, the geese seem comfortable floating together near the center of the pond. Notice how the sentences become longer and more descriptive. That development takes time. Do not rush yourself. Do not try to do anything too fast. Do not hurry. One of the biggest mistakes language learners make is becoming discouraged. They compare themselves to native speakers, or they compare themselves to other students. But every learner develops at a different pace. Some people learn pronunciation quickly. Some people learn grammar quickly. Some people feel comfortable speaking right away. Others need more time. The important thing is persistence. Keep going. Continue listening. Continue learning. Continue exposing yourself to English. Even when progress feels slow, your brain is still learning. Sometimes students think nothing is happening. Then, suddenly, they realize they understand much more English than before. This happens because the brain needs time to organize information. language learning is not always immediately visible. It develops beneath the surface. In some ways, learning a language is similar to planting seeds. When you plant a seed, you do not see instant results. You water the seed. You give it sunlight. You wait. And eventually, growth appears. English works the same way. Every time you listen, you are watering the seed. Every time you read, you are watering the seed. Every time you practice speaking, you are watering the seed. And eventually, your confidence begins to grow. Now I want you to continue to listen. Early in the morning, the pond is usually quiet. Mist sometimes rises above the water in the morning. The geese move slowly through the water. Occasionally, one bird flaps its wings. Small ripples spread across the surface of the water. Some people take photographs if they walk by. Others simply enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. Nature has a calming effect on many people. After spending time outdoors, people often feel less stressed. They breathe more slowly. Their thoughts become clearer, and they begin to notice small details. Language learning also requires attention to detail. For example, English verb tenses can change meaning in important ways. Listen to these examples. The geese float on the pond. The geese are floating on the pond. The geese floated on the pond yesterday. The geese have floated on this pond for years. Each sentence uses a different verb tense. The meaning changes slightly each time. Understanding verb tenses is important, but grammar becomes easier when students hear it used naturally. That is why listening matters so much. You do not need to memorize every grammar rule immediately. Grammar helps, but what you really need is repeated exposure to the language. Over time, grammar patterns start to sound natural. For example, native speakers know that some sentences sound right and others sound wrong. Much of that instinct develops through years of listening. As an English learner, you can develop that instinct too. The process simply takes time and repetition. Now let's talk about vocabulary. Many students try to memorize long vocabulary lists. Sometimes that helps. But vocabulary becomes much more powerful when you learn words in context. For example, today's lesson includes words like pond, goose, geese, breeze, ripple, reflect, surface, float, drift, peaceful, calm, nature. How many of those words do you know? Because you hear these words connected to images and ideas, they become easier to remember. This is one reason visual learning can be so effective. When students connect language to real experiences, memory improves. Perhaps in the future, whenever you see birds floating on water, you will remember some of the English words from this lesson. That connection helps strengthen memory. When you recall words, that also helps to strengthen your memory. Now I want you to practice listening carefully again. I will describe the scene slowly. The sun shines softly across the pond. The water moves gently in the wind. Several geese float near the edge of the pond. A few of the birds paddle farther into the water. Trees stand quietly in the background. There are not very many leaves on the trees. It's early spring. The air feels cool and fresh. Everything seems calm. Now let's say similar ideas another way. Soft sunlight reflects on the water. The breeze creates small movements on the pond. Some geese remain close to the shore. Other birds swim toward the center of the lake. Tall trees surround the area. The atmosphere feels peaceful and refreshing. Again, repetition with variation is extremely important. Students sometimes worry when they do not understand everything immediately. But understanding increases through repeated exposure. Imagine hearing a new song for the first time. At first, the lyrics may sound unclear. But after hearing the song many times, you begin to recognize the words. Language learning often works the same way. Your ears gradually become trained. Now let's discuss pronunciation. Many English learners worry about pronunciation. They want every sound to be perfect. But communication is more important than perfection. A person can speak with an accent and still communicate very effectively. The goal should be clarity. one good way to improve pronunciation is through shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a speaker and repeating the words immediately. This is also an important skill that teachers try to teach their students in class. The teacher says something and students repeat it. You can pause this video and repeat sentences after me. For example, the geese are floating on the pond. Now repeat it. Listen to the rhythm. Notice which words receive stress. Try again. The geese are floating on the pond. The more you practice, the more natural your pronunciation becomes. Another useful technique is reading out loud. When you read out loud, you practice pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency all at the same time. Even 10 minutes of reading aloud each day can help. Do you like to read out loud? I recommend it. Now I want to talk briefly about patience. Patience is extremely important in language learning. Many students become impatient because they want fast results. But learning a language is similar to learning a musical instrument, like a guitar. A person does not become a great guitar player in 1 month. Skill develops through practice. Language learning is also a skill. And like any skill, improvement happens step by step. Sometimes the progress feels slow. But if you continue practicing, improvement will come. I have taught English for many years, and I have seen students improve dramatically over time. Often the students who succeed are not the students with the most natural talent. The students who succeed are usually the students who continue practicing consistently. They continue listening. They continue reading. They continue studying. They write down the ideas I put on the whiteboard. They pay attention to what I have to say. And eventually, their confidence grows. Now let's return to nature. If you spend time outdoors, try describing what you see in English. You do not need complicated vocabulary. Simple sentences are enough. For example, the sky is cloudy. You need to say this out loud. The sky is cloudy. The wind feels cold. The leaves are moving. Or, there aren't any leaves. There are ducks on the lake. The grass is wet. Or, the grass is dry. Simple observations help train your brain to think in English. And because the observations are connected to real life, they feel meaningful. Meaningful language is easier to remember. It's always easier to remember things that are meaningful to you. You can also keep a small notebook. Write down words you hear frequently. Write down useful phrases. Write down sentences you want to remember. Then, review them later. Repetition strengthens memory. Another thing that helps students learn naturally is curiosity. Curious students tend to learn faster. When you become curious about words, expressions, pronunciation, and grammar, your attention increases. And attention is extremely important for learning. For example, maybe today you noticed the difference between the words pond and lake. A pond is usually smaller. A lake is usually larger. What you see in the video is usually described as a pond, but some people might say it's a small lake. Or maybe you noticed the difference between float and drift. Something that floats stays on the surface of the water. Something that drifts moves slowly, often with the wind or the water. Small distinctions like these help improve your vocabulary. Now let's listen to another short passage. In the late afternoon, the light changes across the pond. The water becomes darker. The reflections of the trees grow softer. Some geese gather near the shore. Others continue floating quietly in the distance. The air cools as the sun slowly lowers in the sky. People walking through the nature reserve speak quietly. Many of them seem relaxed. Some stop to watch the birds. Others continue walking along the path. Moments like these remind people to slow down and appreciate simple things. That is also true in language learning. Sometimes students try to learn too much too quickly. But slow, steady learning is often more effective. You do not need to master everything today. Focus on regular improvement. Focus on daily exposure. I recommend at least a half hour to an hour every day. Focus on understanding a little more each week. And eventually, your English becomes stronger. Before we finish today's lesson, I want to encourage you to continue listening to English regularly. Long-form listening practice can be very effective. When you listen for longer periods of time, your brain adapts to the language. Perhaps you are listening to this before you go to sleep. At first, listening may feel tiring, but gradually your concentration improves. You begin recognizing vocabulary more quickly. You begin understanding sentence patterns more naturally, and eventually you spend less time translating. That is one reason videos like this can help. You are hearing English used naturally and repeatedly in a calm environment. The more familiar English becomes, the more confident you feel. Confidence matters. When students become less afraid of mistakes, communication improves. I just made a mistake. We all make mistakes. But remember this: mistakes are a normal part of learning. Every language learner makes mistakes. Mistakes help show what still needs practice. So do not be afraid to speak. Do not be afraid to practice. And do not be afraid to sound imperfect. Improvement comes through use. Now, as we finish this lesson, take one more look at the pond. Notice the movement of the water. Notice the birds. Notice the quiet atmosphere. Perhaps this peaceful scene can remind you that language learning is also a gradual process. You do not need to rush. You simply need consistent practice. Listen regularly. Read regularly. Think in English regularly. Over time, your ability will grow. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope this lesson helps you relax while improving your English listening skills. If this video helped you, subscribe to the channel. You can also visit my website at englishfortheplanet.com for lessons and practice. Keep learning, keep listening, and keep thinking in English. I'll see you next time.